In this video, we will have a look at IELTS Speaking Part 1. We will look at 6 different points. The first thing is, why is it important to know the procedure of the exam? What is the procedure of IELTS Speaking Part 1? What will you talk about during IELTS Speaking Part 1? How many questions will you have to answer? How long you should talk per question, and how long is overall IELTS Speaking Part 1. So, why is it important to know the procedure of Speaking Part 1? Students are very often nervous and anxious about the speaking exam, especially because they have no idea what to expect. They fear the unknown. So by having a look at what happens during the exam, you should have a clear picture of what to expect. Knowing what to expect is the first step, and if you know what is going to happen, you can be better prepared. Logically, the better prepared you are, the better you will score. So this is the reason why it's important to have a look at the procedure of IELTS Speaking Part 1. So what is the procedure of the exam? First of all, you'll be waiting outside the room where the speaking exam takes place. The examiner will come and get you and will ask you to come inside, and then the exam starts. Before Speaking Part 1 starts, there's actually a Part 0 where the examiner introduces himself. He or she will ask you for your full name. They will sometimes also ask you what they can call you, your nickname or some different name. They will ask you where you're from, and they will ask you to see your identification, your personal ID or your passport. Then the examiner will take your passport, will have a look at it, check if it's really you, and they'll give it back to you. And this is when Part 1 starts. So now Part 1 starts. The examiner will actually introduce Part 1 by saying, in the first part of the exam, I'm going to ask you some questions about yourself. Then they will start asking some questions. Most of the time they will start with the first question, do you work or study? And depending on your answer, you will get some questions about work or about study. It happens sometimes as well that they ask different questions. You will have to answer about 3 to 4 questions, and then you will move on to the next topic. The examiner will do this by saying, let's talk about, and he will mention the other topic. For example, let's talk about food, or let's talk about friends. There are also some other variations that he might use. For example, these ones. So, what will you talk about during IELTS Speaking Part 1? In IELTS Speaking Part 1, you will have to talk about 3 different topics. There are many different kind of topics, for example, work, friends, food, leisure time, music, culture, photos, hometown, and many other different kind of topics. For a good overview, I'll post a link below where you can have a look at least 50 different kind of topics. All the questions that the examiner asks are about your personal experience, about your life and how you lead your life. So they're easy questions to answer, unlike, for example, IELTS Speaking Part 3, which are more general, where you need to give your opinion. So, for example, IELTS Speaking Part 1 would be, how many people are there in your family? And you talk about your family. While in Part 3, the question might be, is family important in your country? Here you have to generalize and give your opinion about how important it is in your country. So how many questions do you have to answer? It really depends on how long your answers are. The examiner has to cover 3 topics, and they are restricted by their time limit. They have 4 to 5 minutes, which are a lot more important than how many questions they ask. So you will have to be able to answer either 2, 3, or 4 questions per topic, depending again how long your answers are. So don't worry if you didn't answer that many questions. That means you've been talking a lot, you've been producing lots of language, which means that the examiner has lots of things to work with, and that means that most of the time your grade will be much higher than when you have a lot more questions. So how long should you talk per question? It's important that you sound natural, but still try to talk at least 2 to 3 sentences about one given question. Some questions will be longer, some questions will be shorter. When you feel you've said enough, it's okay to stop. Don't worry, the examiner will ask you the next question. Again, this is speaking part 1. And overall, you don't need to worry. This is just a warm-up to get to the more difficult parts of the exam. This means that the examiner really knows that you're nervous, and they will try to ask questions to make you feel at ease. How long does part 1 last? Part 1 lasts about 4 to 5 minutes. This includes part 0, where the examiner introduces him or herself and where they ask for your passport. It also includes the time they take to ask you questions. They have to cover 3 topics, 4 questions per topic. That means that you won't be speaking the whole 4 to 5 minutes. When the examiner has reached his or her time limit, they will close and they will move on to part 2. They will do this by saying thank you and flipping a page in their examining book, and this will signal the start of part 2.